Welcome everybody to the SNS Show. It's Sal and Sid two-time. We're back here to talk some 49er football. A huge disappointment for us as fans, especially here covering the Niners. I'm extremely disappointed when I got to read you a list of players that we have let go with no compensations coming back our way. Of course, this is the reality of a salary cap and free agency, but the Niners are going to lose or have lost Hargraves, Hufanga, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Charvarius Ward, and the one that stings the most, Trey Greenlaw. And I know we talked about this, the guys that we felt like the Niners more so had to keep as opposed to wanting to keep. And the guy that was the big star was Dre Greenlaw for me. And the 49ers now are starting to look like it's a true rebuild. It doesn't appear like this is in any way, shape, or form, a team that's shaping up to threaten the Rams for the division. I don't see the Niners being a playoff team. The schedule is what makes me want to believe they could be a playoff team. And obviously getting Robert Saleh back is another reason to say that. But the 49ers have let go players that you don't want to use the word irreplaceable because everybody is replaceable in football. But when you're talking of the level of Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, who was an all-pro just a couple years ago, Leonard Floyd, an older guy, and the direction of the team, you could kind of see that, as well as Malik Collins. And I liked Malik Collins as a player. Hargraves, I think it was a financial thing. And another example of the 49ers going in the direction of rebuilding. Charvarius Ward, we knew he wasn't going to come back. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this list?
Seems like a complete reset. It seems like we are obviously trying to get younger. Seems like the owner, Jed York, doesn't want to dump as much money into a team that is just looking to get injured. Like, it's happened too many times now. And yeah, it looks like we're just going to take a year. We find out what it looks like to me is we're going to find out what young players we have that could stand out. And then you build from that, because not like right now, who do we have at D tackle? Kevin Givens? Who
Yeah,
else?
yeah, that's the. I
Yeah.
mean, we got I think Kalia Davis and Givens and
Yeah,
maybe
so
Elliott.
these moves of cutting Javon Hargrave and cutting all these guys that aren't really cost effective. Like, we're not saving a ton of money cutting these guys. It's almost just get the young guys on the field. Let's see who can play. Let's get the rookies on the field. Like, we're gonna have majority of our rookies possibly playing a decent amount of snaps this year, and yeah, let's see who we could build off of.
So the interesting thing is the 49ers have 10 draft picks. They got some compensatory picks, which is huge for the 49ers, especially based on the road. It looks like we're going in terms of a rebuild or at least playing much younger. The 49ers, with their first round pick, it's at 11. And when you look at this list, it makes you wonder, where will they go? Like, there's still the O-line issue that we haven't talked about. Banks is another. That list there was just strictly defense. If you're going to go on offense, there's Banks, Debo, and there's some holes there. I don't think the Debo one is a big problem for us. I think we got to rely on Pearsall to become something.
So as of right now, would you agree that our defense is a lot weaker than the offense?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, I could see the 49er offense if you got a healthy McCaffrey and Ayuk whenever he does come back. If Pearsall and Jennings can take care of business with Kittle, and, and then you got McCaffrey coming out of the backfield with a Mason coming off the bench and maybe Garendo. I don't think the 49ers offense is a huge concern. Obviously, there are some concerns on the O-line. But when you look at the defensive side, that's the reason why I started with this list. The defensive side, I mean, you're going to look at your leaders. Your leaders are going to be Fred Warner, which is obvious, and then your other leader is going to be
So
Lenore and Bosa.
yeah.
So that's three levels when you talk about Lenore being in the secondary and Fred Warner being at the linebacker position, and then Bosa being on the line. That's promising that you still have three pretty solid players. But outside of that, you're talking young, unproven. I mean, Malik Mustafa, I have high praise on him. I see potential. I'm pretty excited about him. But then Jair Brown, a struggling second round pick, who we were able to get off the field when Hufanga came back. And it felt like that was a good thing for the defense. Now he's going to most likely be back onto the field. The 49ers are going to have to fill the corner spot unless Trey Brown is that fill. We don't know yet. And then you're talking D-line. There's a serious revamp there. The edge, are we going to rely on Matos? It's possible. The interior is a massive hole right now. And the linebackers, beside Fred Warner, nothing to be excited about.
Yes.
So I personally, if I'm the Niners, I pick D tackle first round. I want a guy that's going to take away the run and assist people like Fred Warner, where his shirt's kind of clean before he gets to the back. But that's my first round pick. And then as you address the draft all the way through, if I'm the 49ers, I just strictly stick to defense and I draft defense because the holes are massive. The players that we lost it's not something you don't see that every year. Like every single player is a credible NFL football player with a good career. And we're just letting these guys go like it's nothing, almost like we've given up.
Yeah, I see it sort of like when Kyle and John first took over and they completely rebuilt a destroyed roster. We've seen them go D tackle or D line at least almost every single year, whether it was, we all know the names, Kinlaw, Bosa, Buckner, Armstead. So I think it's a guarantee they're going at the D line this year in the first round at least. Yeah, I think D tackle right now is the weaker and more important position as opposed to edge rusher.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say this because I happened to see this. Grant Cohn had something to say about the 49ers, and you mentioned it. And it has something to do with the 49ers maybe not looking to spend on the 49er organization, as the owners have bought two soccer teams. And I think there's some truth to that, because that list that I named there, if it isn't about money, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's a lot of dead money that we're creating here and paying guys that are playing for other football teams. So it makes me feel like they're trying to save some money and they're not really concerned about this upcoming season. It sucks that the Super Bowl happens to be in San Francisco this year. And in the last 7 years, this is probably the worst team assembled so far. What the 49ers do going forward, obviously the Bosa, we lost in this Bosa sweepstakes, trying to get him from the Chargers. He ends up going to the Buffalo Bills. That to me really stung as well, because I felt like if you could get crazy pressure from your two DNs, you could hide a lot on the defense and maybe draft that D tackle that I'm talking about and, create a front seven that can help the back end.
I mean, but after all that's happened, wouldn't signing Joey Bosa now, like with the roster we have now, wouldn't signing him just be an example of all the past mistakes you've made? Like, if we're trying to get younger, why sign somebody who's in the later part of his career and we don't know if he can stay healthy? And I think that's
Well,
exactly what they're trying to avoid.
I think the direction that they've decided to go based on not signing Bosa, I'm sure they offered him a contract, but they didn't go aggressive after him. And I think that's what they're telling you is that they're not willing to go hard on a guy that's a bit older and has shown injury concerns. So the Niners are changing their ways. John Lynch has been given the key to the roster, and the owner basically told him, "Go get me a Super Bowl." In a sense, that like he was able to bring in whoever he wanted, and the roster was always spectacular. This is the first time in the John Lynch era where it's now more so about rebuilding and revamping. So as a 49er fan, we've been spoiled in the last 6-7 years that we almost have this expectation that we're going to be a good football team, and you can see it in the fans and what they have to say, and that's true. But if the 49ers are going for a straight rebuild, it makes sense now, because the star players that got us to those Super Bowls are getting older. So letting go of like guys that helped you. The only one that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm going to continue saying it, is Greenlaw. Greenlaw is 27 years old, and he's a premier linebacker. They're so hard to find. He's a great tackler. He's a great tackler in space. And then he plays the run very well. He plays the pass well. So that's the one that I don't agree with. But I agree with letting go the older guys of like Hargraves and Malik Collins and Floyd, as much as it sucks. It's what the Niners are doing right now in terms of rebuilding and going in that direction. So I agree with that stuff. It's just the concern or the curious. I'm just curious as to what we do in the draft, because if we go anything on offense early, because I'm like, I don't want to see, you know, a receiver or an O lineman is going to be the highest probability of what they would take if it's not on the D. But I personally think they got to stack the D. I think the offense is better than the defense at this moment.
I agree with you, but I'm kind of, if I was John Lynch, my mindset going into the draft is best player available basically every pick. Like, yeah, you're not going to draft certain positions because if it doesn't make sense, but I want the best player because I know I'm not competing next year. The Niners are not competing for a Super Bowl next year. We're not going to win the division. We might be competing with the Arizona Cardinals at the bottom of the division. I just want the best player in the fifth round, in the fourth round, in the second round, whatever I think is the best. Even though it's necessarily not the number one need, I'm going to take the best player I see.
And that's a fair argument. For me, I do lean towards I agree, yes, take the best player on the board, but that player almost feels like to me it has to be on the defense. I think the 49er offense is fine. I think it's going to be fine going forward. Sure, McCaffrey's going to get older and you're going to have to replace him, same with Kittle. But I don't think you need to be, worried about replacements like that as of right now. I think you can never go wrong with a great defensive player, especially in the trenches. You can never go wrong with, a guy that's a good linebacker. The front seven is where you draft. I've always believed that. I'm not against an O lineman either. You have a dominant O line, you can do things like the Eagles did on offense. But if you have a dominant D line, you can make Patrick Mahomes look pedestrian. And that is something that not a lot of teams have been able to do. And the way you beat a 17 and or a 16 and Patriots team is the same thing. It's in the trenches. It's the D line. You got Michael Strahan, Hugh Manure, Justin Tuck. This is how you beat these unbeatable teams. And the 49ers are at a point now where, yes, it's not about winning now. So let's build to win. And I believe it's D line and front seven. Moving forward, I just wanted to talk about some of the signings that the 49ers have brought in and the question marks behind them. Luke Farrell is the one that just pops off the screen to me. He's a third string tight end from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the 49ers signed him to a 3-year, $20 million contract with $11 million guaranteed. So when you see those numbers, it says loud to me that the 49ers believe that they've found somebody, but you put on the tape and I mean, you see some good things, sure, but nowhere near what they've paid. And what we're talking about how we want to avoid paying people and getting younger and trying to rebuild the squad. And then you go do that signing. That one has me scratching my brain because Dre Greenlaw, which we talked about, is $35 million on 3 years. So we can't sign Dre Greenlaw, but we can sign Luke Farrell, a backup tight end.
Yeah, it's almost like that's kind of the replacement for Kyle Juszczyk, an expensive replacement and somebody who's not as athletic. Kyle Juszczyk was kind of like a tight end. He's an athletic fullback. This guy is not athletic. This guy ran a 4.89 on his draft day. He is a slow tight end that is going to come onto the field to block. He is not catching passes. He's not dangerous with the ball in his hand. We paid a guy to replace a cheaper, better guy. I think that's the way I see it.
It's actually not cheaper. That's what, scratch your head again. So if the idea is that he's a good run blocker and we want to replace our fullback with this tight end coming out of Jacksonville, you're paying the same money. He's averaging 6.6.
I was saying Juszczyk is the cheaper option, cheaper and better.
Well, same price, really.
Sure.
The money isn't the issue. It's why are we going in the direction of not signing Dre Greenlaw, let's say, and we want to sign a tight end that's a backup who might play some fullback for $20 million, an average of $6 million a year, or just over $6.5 million a year. So those are questions that I have. Like I said, I've always trusted John Lynch. I trust his process. I understand, this is a salary cap business. So there's going to be some things that might not look that pretty on paper, but he has a plan for it. That's the one that stuck out to me that didn't make a lot of sense. I like it.
Sorry, I don't mean to be a hater, but that's Kyle Shanahan written all over. If you ask me.
Me personally, I don't see how Kyle Shanahan is vouching for a third string tight end that hard. So that one to me, I don't have an answer for that one. I really don't. I don't know if that's Shanahan or John
I'm
Lynch.
guessing too. I don't have an answer for it.
I'm not behind that at all. I like the Trey Brown acquisition. I do see some potential in him. The play that sticks out to my head is in 2023, week 6. He had a beautiful pick on the sideline and one-on-one man coverage. He played him tight. And anytime you're playing Jamar Chase, if you could just stop him with the catch, never mind picking it off, it's a huge win. So he had a good rep there. I understand it's one rep, but he said something interesting. I think it came out today that he's promising that the Niners have landed a good one there and that he's been riddled with injuries in the last year. And so maybe we got something there. The other signings just seem like blah, blah, blah to me. Richie Grant, Pinnock, Luke Gifford, and a special teamer. Another one that I kind of find funny is Demarcus Robinson for 9.5 mil. I think the reason why the 49ers felt the need to bring him in is the deep threat that we haven't ever had in this run, really. We don't have a deep threat. So I can understand that one, why you'd want him, but it's just weird. $9.5 million is not a lot of money. It's just weird why the 49ers are filling wide receiver. That one you could say is Shanahan, because we're filling wide receiver spots when the holes are gaping on the old line and D line. They're so big. It's hard not to see.
No.
And then today I was listening in and something about possibly trading Christian McCaffrey. I think that personally, I'm a huge fan of Christian McCaffrey. He brings an element in offense that maybe one or two players in the league can emulate. And possibly trading him. So when you talk about possibly trading a 28-year-old running back, the return to me, even a Christian McCaffrey, it cannot be anything crazy. In my opinion, it's gonna be a third round pick. And that's where you draft running backs generally, third round. That's a good spot to pick a back. So if you're the Fenners, is it to the point where you want to trade him for that third round pick so bad that maybe you could land a player there that makes a difference, which we've done many times before?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it, and I'll tell you why. We agree we're not competing for a Super Bowl this year. Okay. We need to start getting return on some of these players that we're letting go. Like, what have we gotten in return for all these studs that are leaving our team? Nothing. And part of the reason of that is we're keeping them for too long, and by the time we get rid of them, nobody wants them. Nobody wants their contract, whatever it is. Could have got a first for Brandon Ayuk last year. Now we can't get anything because no one wants that contract, especially coming off the injury. Let's get something in return for one of these stud players we have, especially now while we're in a complete rebuild.
Yeah, I agree, but I just don't feel like that's the guy you trade because I don't think the return is good. Like I agree with the Ayuk trade of last year. That one made sense because you're getting a first round pick for a guy that was causing a lot of problems, not wanting to sign and on the sideline during training camp, just causing distractions everywhere. And then he does come in and he didn't live up to the contract until he got hurt anyway. Sure, he got hurt, but he wasn't doing a 30. Brandon Ayuk got paid $30 million. That's not far away from the names of CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson. And that's the reason why that contract is bad. It's not because he got hurt. And him missing the training camp made it worse too because he came in rusty and he started to settle in a little bit, but then he got hurt. So now you're stuck with his contract because it's true. Nobody's going to want to take his contract and nobody's going to want to get a guy coming off an injury of that sort and paying big, like let's say a first round draft pick for him. I don't see that happening. And, so now the Niners are going to consider trading a guy like Christian McCaffrey for a third round pick. I believe you can get good players in the third round, but you don't have the same feeling as you do on a first round pick. And you're going to sell Christian McCaffrey for a third round pick. Me personally, I don't agree with that one.
Okay, look at it this way, though. Let me say it this way. If somebody were to offer the second round pick that we have tendered on Jordan Mason, okay, so Jordan Mason, a guy that could be a beast in the NFL for the next 5 years, or a third for a guy who's likely on his last year of having a chance of dominating. I could see the return there. It's second round pick for a younger, great player, or a third round pick for an older player. I would take the third round pick, and you have Garendo, who we both believe in. We both believe that he could be something big, and Jordan Mason like that. That's a serious 1-2 punch. I think when you could get a third round pick, you should take it. But
Anytime you can get a second round pick for a non all pro like Jordan Mason, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Mason, but if you can get a second round pick, that you don't draft, in my opinion, you don't draft a back in the second round. You draft, D line, O line. That's the kind of GM I would be. So if you could let him go for a second round pick, that is a good move. But Christian McCaffrey on a third round pick, the other thing too about Christian McCaffrey, you might feel like he has one good year left. I disagree. I think Christian McCaffrey is like a different kind of specimen. The off field workouts, the discipline, and all of that comes with that in terms of the food and sleep and rest. And he does that better than anybody. He's very much like the possibility that you see in Derrick Henry, where Derrick Henry's career is still alive, even though he's older. And Derrick Henry plays a punishing style. And he's still able to do it because these guys, they're different than your typical back, which is probably why they're all pros, which is probably why a guy like Christian McCaffrey gets offensive MVP. Sure, history tells us the back tails off around 20, but I just feel like, there's a few different kind of backs, and I think he's one of them. I think what he brings to the table outside of running the ball too, in terms of catching, that's something that won't leave right away either.
yeah, but history also tells us he's not going to stay healthy. So even if you're right about all this off the field and he's different, which I agree with, it doesn't play into the factor that on the field he's going to be healthy to play or to even show it off.
Hey, like I say, if you can get a second round pick for him, you trade that. You make that trade. A third round pick is just not good enough for that good of a player. It's just not. He's way too good for a third round pick. But if you're another team, it makes sense that you're only willing to offer a third round pick because he's older and he's a running back. Running backs, they are too easy to replace. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is not, but running backs are too easy to replace. So they nobody's willing to pay big for a running. Yeah. So the Niners now, I guess to wrap this up, I think what they do in the draft is going to really determine what our expectations are for the season. I don't think the free agency is going to do much. I mean, you're going to get names like Richie Grant and Luke Gifford and maybe Robinson and Pinnock. I don't think the 49ers are going to make a splash. It's very clear that the 49ers are in true rebuild mode. So it's going to come down to the draft as to how they do this year. I do think the 49er offense, I really believe the 49er offense is still going to be considered a good offense in football if McCaffrey's on that team and Ayuk eventually shows up. But the thing to look out for is what we draft, and I'm hoping it's all defense. If it's up to me, the 49ers do not draft outside of defense in the first 4 rounds. I know the need for offensive line is there, but we've gotten away with battle lines in the past because of the style of Kyle Shanahan. So let's lean on Kyle Shanahan some more in that aspect, and let's get Robert Saleh what he deserves. And that's a good personnel group. Right now, the personnel group is very concerning. You cannot play defense in the NFL. I don't care who the coach is if you cannot stop the run. And the run does not look good right now when you have some D tackles by the names of Kevin Givens, Elliott, he's a decent player. Khalil Davis, decent player. But there has to be a player that has some dominating force in the interior. And if you can get lucky on another edge player to help Bosa out now that Leonard Floyd's gone, that's a big thing too. I do think Matos is a good player to rotate in. I don't believe he's an every down DN, but I could be wrong. He's going to I think he's going to get an opportunity to prove that this year, depending on who they draft in the first round. If the first round draft pick is a DN, then that might interfere with that. But if the first round draft pick is a D tackle, I think you're going to see Matos get given the opportunity of being the other side. And then after that, it'll be the draft picks coming in. So let's wait and see what happens with this draft. I think this draft is going to be the most important draft John Lynch has had in a long time.
Can't afford to mess up.
He cannot afford to mess up, and he's got a lot of picks. So the 49ers, if they get lucky like they did in the past, in terms of drafting Hafunga in the 5th round, and Dre Greenlaw, I think, was a 5th round pick as well. If you can land picks like that along with your early picks,
Mm-hmm.
then now you're talking of a defense that could carry you. Or, I don't believe the 49ers are a Super Bowl threat, even if they hit the draft, let's say. But one thing's for sure, the offense is legit, I believe. And if you get a good defense along with that, now you can make a push like, a wild card win would be a success. And if the 49ers don't head in that direction because of a bad draft, don't be surprised if you see them walk away with 4 or 5 wins. And hopefully that doesn't mean a lot of people out the door. That's the scary thing here. I don't know why the 49ers GM and coach have so much comfort, but maybe they've been told to do this rebuild and accept the consequences, and it's not them that will be out the door.
Right.
I think there's some truth to that because, letting all those players go as a GM, that there's a good possibility your team could be heading in the wrong direction. And we know how this is a business. And when you're not winning, your job's always up, and there's always a possibility you lose your job. But if they've been told to do this rebuild, get rid of the big expenses, which it seems they have done, maybe the plan is 2 years from now as opposed to next season.
Well, let's go into, we've seen worse teams than this, worse rosters than this, do pretty decent in the NFL. So let's see what you guys could do with a not stacked roster. Because guess what? You got a stacked roster for years and years, and you couldn't pull off the win. So let's take away this. Let's take away your spending a little bit, and let's see what you're actually made of as a coach. It's Kyle Shanahan, head coach. We're going to find out. Let's see what you could do with a roster that isn't an all-time, possibly debated as one of the greatest of all-time rosters.
Listen, I think the 49ers offense can still be top 10, but the problem is when your defense is on the field a lot and giving up points, it affects your offense in many ways. Obviously, limited opportunities, but then it forces you to start pushing the ball down the field, which creates turnovers. So the 49ers offense is something that I believe in as of right now. I still believe in their abilities. I have no faith in the defense, even with the acquisition of Robert Saleh as of right now, because of the front seven is, it's a gaping hole that they have to fill.
Yeah, like you said, they'd have to hit home run in the draft to not look embarrassing this year.
Yeah, the defense, even with Robert Saleh, is scary right now because of all those losses. It's the D line that sticks out the most for me because I've never really liked Kevin Givens, and that's your top interior tackle right now. So you don't truly have a true nose tackle. That Anderson guy,
close.
That Anderson guy that came in last year, I don't like his style either. He's a big guy that doesn't, he still gets pushed around. I don't believe in his game, to be honest. The 49ers brought him back from what I understand, but the 49ers have to address D tackle and maybe an edge player that can help out on the run as well as some pass rush.
One topic that I don't want to skip over. Talked offense and defense. Let's talk some special teams. So the reports came out a long time ago. It's been a while. They still believe in Jake Moody, and Jake Moody's going to get his shot here, and we're going to see more Jake Moody in 2020.
The thing that blows my mind is I understand as a front office, you draft a player, he's a high pick for a kicker, he's a 3rd round pick. So the expectation is really high for a kicker when you come in at 3rd round and he doesn't live up to it. And now we're talking, this is year 3 or 4 coming in. I believe it's year 4 coming up.
Yeah.
And at some point, you got to believe what he's putting on tape. And it's at the point now where I didn't even think he thought he'd be coming back. That's how bad he played. I even feel like George Kittle felt bad for him because the expectation was to get cut. It appeared that way. So the 49ers have not only surprised us, they've surprised Jake Moody that he's back and George Kittle, because I believe that. I don't think he has any reason to still be on that roster. I think it's fine to draft a kicker in the 7th round and try him. Once you lose your confidence at that position, we've seen it in the past. Great kickers go tanking down quick. I've seen Gostowski lose his confidence. I've seen Akers on the 49ers. He costed us many good, big kicks. He wasn't hitting anything.
So it's happening to Tucker right now.
Yeah. So when a good kicker starts to show you that, you got to start believing it. And Jake Moody never was good, and he's been showing you that. So there's no reason to hang on here other than the fact that they drafted him in the 3rd round, and it's almost like they're hanging on to try to almost prove people wrong that he is good. But It's time to believe that he's not good. It's time to believe the tape.
Yeah, so the message I wanted to send to Jake Moody, because we're going to see him come out onto the field this year. We're going to see him miss a whole bunch of kicks. Let's hope he can hit 50% of the field goals coming. Never mind field goals, PATs. Anyways, the message I wanted to send to him is it is no longer your fault.
It's true.
It's not your fault. You're going to miss. And guess what? I'm not mad at you because you shouldn't be there. And like you said, I don't even believe you think you should be there. So no hard feelings, Jake Moody. When you miss a ton of field goals this year, I won't be blaming.
Yeah, I would be one to bet that he's going to miss some field goals this year. And the funny thing is, the pressure of a winning team is not even there anymore, and he's still going to miss kicks because at this point you have to admit it. The guy's not what you thought, and it is what it is, and you move on. That's the reality of it. You don't hang on to people just because you draft them in the third round. The proof is in the pudding. The guy has folded under pressure. Now the pressure is going to be lightened a bit for him, and they're going to hope that that helps his kicking abilities. But let's say he grinds his way through this year with like an 80% average and they like it and they keep him. When the pressure picks up the following year, if the 49ers become good, you're going to see a resemblance of what you've seen in the past and you're not going to be happy. So it's just time to believe that what you've seen and just move on. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's a kicker.
Yeah.
Obviously, kickers play big roles and they can win you a Super Bowl. They can cost you a Super Bowl. And this guy,
obviously, you wasted a third-round pick.
Yeah, and this guy's on the side of costing you a Super Bowl. Let's say it's the fourth quarter, it's 28-27, 40 yards out, 2 seconds left. What is your confidence level? It's not high.
He's missing. No. My confidence level is sky high that he's.
And I agree. So I think the 49ers, after this year, hopefully it's just because the tank year appears that way. They think we'll ride him out for one more year. But to me, it makes no sense. That's something that you should be trying to build on and getting a new guy in there and see what you can come up with. But that's it for this episode. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like button, comment on our videos. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about in future episodes if that's something that you're interested in. And until next time, take care.
Peace.